What's up, YouTube? This is Too Raw for TV. Former President Donald Trump scores a decisive victory in the Iowa caucus last night, the first contest of the GOP primary season. It was expected, but still, the margin of his victory, 30 percentage points over his nearest rival, shows the strength that Trump has, despite the legal woes, despite the scandals that have plagued him over the past several years, despite the high negatives, and despite the fact that the mainstream media, for the most part, hates him. Don't advertise him. But his grapple hold of the GOP party is still apparent. The official results, as far as percentages go, Trump received, or pretty much with 99% of results in, Trump received 51% of the vote. Ron DeSantis, his nearest rival, 21.2%. Nikki Haley, third at 19.1%. Vivek Ramaswamy, who, I got a reality check last night. I'm going to talk about him in a separate video. Received just 7.7% of the vote. And I was expecting him to drop out after the New Hampshire primary. But I just saw my boy LB's video. Vivek Ramaswamy dropped out last night. So I guess Iowa voters pretty much gave him and his wife a reality check about where they stand in this country. People like him. Asa Hutchinson got only 0.2% of the vote, less than 200 votes. All the other candidates so far polled to total less than 1,000 votes. Trump says that this has been an incredible experience. Trump thanked Iowans for delivering him a decisive win. Trump also thanked his team and supporters who turned out to vote despite the Arctic blast that brought freezing temperatures throughout the state. You may recall back in 2016 that despite Trump being a phenomenon at that time, he lost the first contest. You may recall he didn't show up for that last debate before the Iowa caucus, and he lost to Ted Cruz in Iowa, though he would go on to win the New Hampshire primary and the majority of the remaining contests. When he was president back in 2020, with no real true opposition except for I think Bill Weld had a token opposition against him. I think Iowa gave him like 97% of the vote, but that really wasn't a truly contested primary, a truly contested contest. This was contested. So it was important, and it's interesting that Trump was able to win the Iowa caucus this time by such a large margin when he lost it 8 years ago. I think it's also interesting to note, when it comes to Iowa, the shift that the state has taken over the past decade. Iowa, for many years, leaned Democratic. Remember, it was a bellwether state as recently as the Bush years. Remember, Bush and Kerry were competing hard for the state. Barack Obama won the state twice. So just as recently as 2012, it was a Democratic state. But Trump has transformed this state into a GOP reliable state. Let's look at some of these numbers. Give you an example I'm talking about here. 2004, Iowa. Matter of fact, let's go before that. Let's go before this. Show what I'm talking about here. In 1984, when Ronald Reagan had that 49-state landslide against Walter Mondale, the farming crisis was able and economic issues and the farming crisis that affected many farmers in that state caused Reagan to win that state by only about 7 points in an election that he won by almost 20 points nationally. In 1988, Mike Dukakis, who got buried in an electoral landslide against George H.W. Bush, was able to carry Iowa. The liberal, Michael Dukakis, was able to carry Iowa by a 55 to 45% margin. In 1992, Bill Clinton carried Iowa in a three-way race between himself, the then President George H.W. Bush, and Ross Perot. Bush got 37%, Clinton 43%, and Perot 19%, which were actually the exact percentages nationally. 1996, Bill Clinton was able to win Iowa 50% to 40% to 9% for Ross Perot, who that year ran on a reform ticket. Bob Dole was his opponent in the Republican. And it was close to the national percentages. So it was almost, like I said, a bellwether state, reflective of the nation. In 2000, Al Gore narrowly carried Iowa over George W. Bush, 48.5% to 48.2%. But in 2004, Bush was able to flip the state back red over John Kerry, 49.9% to 49.2%. But Barack Obama, in 2008, was able to, and he spent a lot of time in Iowa to win the Iowa caucus that year for the Democrat nomination. But he was able to flip Iowa back to the Democrats, 54% to 44% against John McCain. He retained that state in 2012, though the margin was a little bit narrower, against Mitt Romney, 52% to 46%. But starting in 2016, you saw a trend for Iowa going red. Trump beat Hillary in that state 51% to 48%. And in 2020, President Trump beat Joe Biden in that state 53% to 45%. It was an even larger margin. So you're seeing this red trend go on in Iowa. I don't know if it's just an anomaly that's related to Trump, or whether it's a shift that's going to be more permanent. I'm suspecting it's going to be a semi-permanent shift. We'll see. But anyway, congratulations to Trump, and on to New Hampshire. And tell me what you guys think.